Hello and welcome to Moving Through Menopause. I'm joined this afternoon by Dr. Shiroko Sokitch, and she is in Sonoma County in the good old United States. And it just so happens I've been there. I was saying to Dr. Shiroko, welcome, Dr. Shiroko. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, we connected online because we have mutual interest in holistic health,
Mhm.
health in its broadest sense. And I'm sure you'll forgive me for saying that we are both women of a certain age.
No problem. That's the point of this.
Well,
Yeah.
and, we have our experiences of transitioning through life. And for me, it was a bit of a rocky road, I have to confess. But I've had a wonderful week listening to your audiobook. And I mean, that's an incredible piece of work. I can only imagine how difficult that was to come up with.
Mhm.
How
It
did
was, yeah.
you?
It took years, literally years. Yeah.
And were you writing as you were working at the same time?
Yeah. I've never really had, I mean, I have vacations periodically, but not very long, and never really had time off work in all the years I've been in practice. So,
Mm. And so, of course, we should mention that you are a medical doctor,
mhm.
and that for some of your time, you were a surgeon and also an emergency medicine doctor,
Mhm.
dealing with all sorts of traumas, fresh from the ambulance.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I can't imagine how stressful that must be for a person.
Mhm. Well, you know, the first time when I was a third year medical student, I had to do my first emergency room rotation, and I was terrified
Mm.
the first time I walked in. And I remember because my first shift was the night shift. So I started at like, I think 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I remember before I went in, I was like shaking in my boots. And then I went in, and my first patient took me like 6 hours. And he was a drunk who had like a cut on his eye. And it took me 6 hours to sew him up, and because I didn't know how. And it was the county hospital. I went to medical school in Seattle, and so it was in the county hospital there, which was where all the traumas went. And I remember how terrified I was. But by the end, I had that rotation for 4 weeks. By the end of 4 weeks, I was seeing 6 patients in an hour. And I transformed, from a terrified medical student who didn't know how to do anything to a medical student who was like in charge. And I like something new was born in me in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like going to battle, isn't it? Really, sink or
Yeah.
swim.
And then you stop thinking about it being traumatic, or, like all of those kinds of things, they go away. So, yeah. So,
But even as you were working in the hospital situation, you were developing an interest in Chinese medicine and holistic approaches to health.
yeah, I mean, as a result of that emergency room rotation, I became interested in surgery.
Ah,
Because it was the first time I got to save a life, like really be there when a life was saved from, death to life. And when a patient came in with a gunshot wound, and it made me interested in surgery. And the people in the county hospital and the ones that watched medical students wanted me to become a surgeon. So they helped me a lot in the transition from medical student to going to surgical residency. And, as a child, and as a young, before medical school, I always was interested in integrative medicine. But then I dropped it because of this whole experience with surgery. And so my first year in surgical residency was really all about surgery. But then I had my first midlife crisis in my second year, and began to ask questions, because there was more. I began to realize there was more to living than saving a life for myself as much as it was for other people, or for the people that I took care of. And that moment, even though it's an impressive moment, there's so much more, and that you really want to live a full life. So I began to question that. And at that point, I took a month off from my residency and had a dream that if I stayed in surgery, I would die. And it was like a banner, like, if you stay in surgery, you will die. So I was like, well, now what? And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But then somebody gave me a book on Chinese medicine called The Web That Has No Weaver. And I read that book, and I just fell in love, like, with the whole idea of Chinese medicine and how it works. And so that's, at the time, it wasn't really my first thought to do integrative medicine. But then when I read this book, I was like, I have to learn acupuncture. I have to learn how to do this. And so that's, kind of one thing led to the other. And here I am doing both now for over 30 years. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I know I'm an acupuncture trained physiotherapist, but not in the Chinese philosophy. It is much more Western medical acupuncture. That's my background and training. So any of the Chinese philosophy, Chinese medicine that I understand is just from my own reading, really. But I am very drawn to, the idea that everything is so interconnected. The more that we work with people, the more we start to realize you can't separate out emotions, for instance, from this, a sensation of pain. And so, this whole interconnectedness, the Chinese medicine really seems to speak to that very well from where I sit.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, particular challenges in menopause, estrogen decline has systemic effects. It's not just in the sex organs, that we notice changes. The brain, the heart, every bit of us, the muscle, the bone, every bit of us is influenced by this, and the emotional sort of journey that you're on as well, with transitioning at this time of life. For me, it was definitely a challenge, and still is. I'm not sure that it's going to go away completely. But how do you explain that in Chinese medicine? How would we explain that?
So in Chinese medicine, everything is based on energy, and energy moves through your body in certain patterns. And when your energy is out of balance, there are problems. And so everything we look at is that. And when every organ has different functions, and emotional functions and spiritual functions, in addition to many different physical functions than Western medicine. So I'll give you an example of the main organ in menopause is the kidneys. And your kidneys are really the foundation of your energy. So they're also they're called the Jing. They hold the essence of your energy. So you're born with a certain amount of energy, which is your Jing, and that's housed in your kidneys. And the kidneys are the deepest layer of energy, and they rule your low back, your knees, your bones, your overall sense of having energy, big transitions in life, the emotion of fear. They open in the ears, so they regulate your hearing. They regulate the physical matter of your brain, so all the chemistry that your brain has and all of that. And and the power of will, which is the kind of the spiritual, the power of forcing yourself to change your life when you need to. So when menopause happens, that's a big transition in life, right? What happens is there's also this concept of yin and yang. So there's the masculine, which is yang. It's daytime, bright, hot, sunny, masculine energy. And then the yin, which is cool, moist, feminine, nighttime energy. And those two energies are cycling throughout the day all the time. And as we approach menopause, what's happening is that these energies begin to shift. And in particular, the yin, which is the feminine energy, starts to drop. Well, at nighttime, the yin energy is supposed to come up and the yang energy is supposed to go down. And what happens is that when the yin energy drops, the yang energy ends up being higher at night. So that's when you get that hot and you can't sleep, you know, hot flashes, and so all those kinds of things.
This imbalance between day and night, the yin and the yang, as you describe it, is fascinating, because definitely, you know, this is, of all of the symptoms that women describe, hot flushes and nighttime disruptions is quite high on the list of problems that people experience.
Right. And so the kidneys also rule the emotion of fear, right? So then you could be more anxious.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in life, the liver regulates the smooth flow of energy in your body, and it regulates the emotion of anger, and it regulates your menstrual cycles. And so when throughout life, women have problems with their periods, they get PMS, they get, you know, that terrible anger and frustration that we get around PMS time, or fibroids, or all of those kinds of things. Those are connected to liver imbalance. And so at menopause or perimenopause, the liver also begins to go out of balance. And so then you have those mood swings and those times where it feels like everything's crazy. I remember in my 40s, I had some mood swings. Some of them were connected to my marriage, but some of them were just like I didn't recognize myself as a person. You know? Like, who is this? I can't even be rational, right? Sometimes. So so that's all connected to that energy imbalance of your periods changing. And so and because in Chinese medicine everything's connected, right? So all the different organs have different roles and they're doing different things. So another symptom that maybe you may not recognize as perimenopausal is the heart palpitations.
Oh, yeah. I had them all.
Which is why you're such an expert. But the kidneys are they're they house the essence. So they hold the foundation of all the organs. So they're kind of the base. And as the kidney energy changes, so another one of the things about the kidneys is right living. So lifestyle is very important to staying balanced. And in our culture, we tend to overwork. So they say not too much sex, not too much work, not too much food, like everything in moderation and everything in balance. And that's how you preserve your essence. If you're lucky and you were given a lot of essence when you were born, then you can burn your essence more.
Yes.
Or you get to that place where you burn out. But some of these symptoms occur to people as young as in their mid-30s because of whatever they're doing in their lifestyle, or or stresses, or because they didn't have that much energy to begin with. So, or something intervenes, like if you get a chronic infection of some sort, or we talked briefly before we got on this call about adverse childhood experiences. So traumatic childhoods can build up and damage your essence. So so all of that is connected to what could cause symptoms as you get older. And to me, perimenopause is a time where it all comes together, not necessarily in a fun way, but because it's like your whole young adult life. As you get into middle age life, there's all these things that happen, and then as we get into perimenopause, we shift in energy, and it's not just a physical thing, it's a spiritual thing. It's a very important time emotionally and spiritually. And making that transition gracefully is not always easy.
No, it's really not actually. And yeah, I think what we're saying is there's physical things happening in the body, and then there might be environmental factors that make a contribution, stress at work and such like, nutritional status. And then there's the emotional, spiritual side of the equation, and that's all these things are colliding at once. And there aren't many models that go any way to describe or to make these connections in the way that Chinese medicine does. That interconnectedness of everything, and people may be unfamiliar with these concepts. And could perhaps write them off as a whole load of nonsense. But for centuries, this wisdom has served very well. And now increasingly, the scientists are demonstrating that there's a whole lot of what's the word? That's my menopausal memory again. There's a whole lot of validity in a lot of these things that we see, and I mean the experiences I've had of needling people, and some of the most miraculous and profound effects that you just I mean it's just too it works too well for there not to be something in it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And, many physicians that talk about acupuncture, I remember I think he was a physician who's in charge of the World Health Organization. And he was giving a talk, and he was talking about how for him, when he first heard about acupuncture, he witnessed it in China being done on animals. And for him, that was a defining factor because it was so obvious, A, that it worked, and B, animals can't make those kind of judgments.
No.
They just respond to what they're experiencing. They're not making a judgment about, or there's not a placebo or anything like that. So, and that's one of the things they say about acupuncture is that there's a placebo effect but honestly, I don't think so. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I still love it. But also, I've seen amazing results. Like you said, I had one woman who had a big ovarian cyst. This was years ago. And she came in, and she was kind of impatient. So she wasn't going to spend all her money trying to get rid of this. So basically, it went away in 2 treatments. And it was a big ovarian cyst, it just went away. Now you could say that maybe it would have gone away anyway, but it was big and they were going to do surgery. She'd already had a lot of surgery. She didn't want more surgery. So things like that can happen, with acupuncture. I had another patient who had a really large fibroid, and she's a tiny little woman. And there was it was in perimenopause that this happened. She was bleeding very heavily. She was determined not to have a hysterectomy. And so she would come in and we would work, and she responded great to acupuncture, and it would shrink, and then it would grow, and then it would shrink. But after a while, I was like, there's got to be an emotional component here. What is it? What is it? And a lot of times, to me, when you're having really heavy bleeding, your uterus is crying. And I know that sounds sort of like, what do you mean? But she had no children, and she had wanted to have children, but somehow in her life it didn't work. And so that was one thing. And she had a dog that was her child. And when her dog died is when she started having that bleeding. And she didn't remember that until she'd done some meditation while having acupuncture, and because I had talked to her about the emotions and the stress and all that. And she was like, oh my God, I had this amazing revelation. And after that, the bleeding stopped and the fibroid shrank, and she went into menopause. So yeah.
I mean, that is the thing, the capacity, the fact that you look at people in the broadest sense
Mhm.
when you take these approaches, and and that this is a time when I think things that you maybe were able to bury,
Mhm.
past life experiences, adverse childhood events we mentioned already. Um, it's kind of a time when things might just rear their head again, or reappear,
Mhm.
and this is, and it's kind of saying, now you really must deal with this, because
Mhm.
it's coming round again. And this seems to be something that happens, that there are women who have no concerns at all around this time of perimenopause or menopause.
Mhm.
And what is it that makes that the case? I mean, we can only hypothesize, but
Right.
it does seem that, for me especially, I can relate, a lifetime of some childhood events when I lost my brother when I was 17, and then
Mhm.
um, my first son had cancer when he was 1 year old, and there was a whole load of awful stuff going on around those times. But
Mhm.
when you're young, you sort of push it to the side
Mhm.
and barrel on through life, and then maybe it's stuff you haven't had time to deal with, or the desire to deal with, and it's telling me now it's time, and making this time
Mhm.
something that I just couldn't ignore, even if I wanted to.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I want to talk just a little bit about the hot flashes because that's a big common issue. And so, one of the things, and maybe you've read this or seen this before, because we talk about hot flashes as annoying and irritating, but really for me what it is it's a time that menopause and perimenopause are a time where our energy is shifting from that reproductive period of our lives
Mm,
to we call it, I don't like that word, but crone, like to come to our wisdom.
mm,
And but there's a physical energy shift that goes from the uterus to the heart, and that transition, that's what's different for different people, right? Is like, how important is it to get to your heart? And what I call hot flashes is power surges, energy pulsing up to your heart. Because like for most of you, if you're having hot flashes, the energy's rising right up into your body. And so it's an important time, and many patients in my practice and many people that I know and in my own life, right around when menopause was starting is when my life fell apart. That was when my marriage ended and I felt heartbroken and I felt like I didn't know who I was, and I had to like reboot my whole entire existence,
mm,
with a whole new point of view on life. And this is not uncommon, it's not uncommon for a marriage to end right around menopause. Of course, traditionally, the children grow up and they leave home right around that time. And, now when women are having babies later, sometimes your child will be in puberty at the same time that you're in menopause, which I've witnessed with several of my patients. And and that's also very interesting, that parallel of puberty at the same time as a woman's going through menopause, and how
mm.
that shift affects both of the people's lives.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really an important time spiritually, like because we're heading into the years before we die, and we are all going to die. So that is a thing that, we start to think about our mortality maybe more than we would when we were younger.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, and who do we want to be as we grow older, and what kind of life do we want? And it's really important to, at that point in your life, to start thinking about, how do I be true to my heart?
Mm,
How do I be true to this soul that I was given, you know. And again, we women tend to put our focus on other people and on our children and if like for me, it was my patients and my marriage. I didn't have children. So, and then to find, well, what is true for me? Who do I want to be in this phase of my life? And I think that's what's so important about perimenopause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely something that I feel now that you mention it. That whole idea of now, if it wasn't going to happen before now, it really must now. This is the time, you know, to really dive into that self discovery and take time to really get in touch with, you know, whatever those next steps look like. And I must say that I was reading your book, well, listening to it on the audio platform, which for me I love because I can walk and read at the same time.
Yeah, cook. Yeah.
But healing when it seems impossible. And you know, really, sometimes this has felt quite impossible. This whole menopause transition, and you really summarize it very nicely into the different strategies that we can take. And there's lots of really good self-help tips in there. And actually, I was sorry I was walking because I would have quite liked to make a note of some of them. But you know, I mean, this is the thing that sometimes we need a guide to help us through these times. If we're not, you know, you don't always know where to begin with it. And so I really did love that about your book.
So my book is Healing When It Seems Impossible, 7 Keys to Defy the Odds. And it's about difficult times in our lives and how to journey through those times using these 7 keys. And the first key is love. And so, and it's all about, like, because I'm a doctor and I take care of mostly health issues. It's what I realized when I went through my own big transition around perimenopause and divorce and all that was that love was what saved me. Love was what brought me back to being able to function and beginning to identify who I am and make choices about what I want for the future of my life. And love is also the most healing power of the universe. And when people come to me, they feel betrayed by their bodies. So they're angry and frustrated with their health because they've been everywhere and tried everything. And so I start with love because you want to start thinking about your body as your friend and as a place where you should feel safe. And I know we sometimes don't feel safe in our bodies for any number of reasons, but one is that we feel betrayed when our bodies give us a bad time. And if you recognize that your body is your friend and you ask yourself, well, if my body is my friend, what's it trying to tell me? Then you will start to have a different approach. You'll have a different attitude. So that's vitally important to getting to a place where you feel better and healing. And then the second key is finding physical balance. And because I've done mystery illness for many, many years and worked with Chinese medicine, when people have problems that nobody knows the answer to, I've put Chinese and Western medicine together to say your hormones, your nervous system, and your immune system form a triangle. And when these 3 elements are in balance, then you can heal from anything. If you get your hormones, your nervous system, and your immune system in balance, you can heal from anything. And there are other elements to physical balance, including finding the root cause and healing your digestion and many elements like that. But these 3 things, especially when somebody has a mystery, and in the 80s when I was in medical school and residency, we didn't have some of the sophisticated testing that we do now. And, you know, even a lot further back, we didn't have sophisticated information. But if you were able to do this, and even now when people have, you know, with COVID, you know, and it's kind of a mystery illness because we still don't understand it. What can we do? We can keep these systems in balance And that will facilitate healing even from something like that.
Mm.
And then the third key is finding your own unique lifestyle. There's a million ways to eat. There's a million ways to exercise. There's a million ways to sleep. There's so many things out there for how to do and how to be. So what's the right lifestyle for you? And it changes over time. So when you're 20, it's different than when you're 40, and different when you're 60. So one way of exercising when you're 20 might not work anymore, and you're in perimenopause. The fourth key switches between the third and the fourth key is listening to your body, learning to listen to your body. And I love this because, all that information I gave you about the liver and the kidneys, those are ways you can listen to your body. If you have low back pain, maybe your kidneys are out of balance, or your knees are sore, maybe your kidneys are out of balance. And so you can listen to your body using the tools of Chinese medicine, and then adjust your lifestyle in order to figure out, what does your body want? How do you need to exercise now? Like, I used to do kickboxing in my 40s. Actually, an injury in a car accident made me unable to kickbox, but also as I've gotten older, hardcore exercise causes me to be injured. And so I have to do Tai Chi and yoga, and when I do weightlifting, I have to do it differently than I used to, so all of those things are changes that we experience, and learning to listen to those things. And then the fifth key is finding emotional balance, and recognizing that any sort of physical imbalance also includes an emotional component. And each organ in Chinese medicine has an emotional and spiritual component. And then the sixth key is never give up, and to recognize that you're on a heroic journey to find answers for your healing. And you may have had a hard time. You may have been to many different people. You may have had different answers. And when you feel like you're at the end of your rope, don't give up. There's a reason you're going through this, and there might be I call it patience and persistence. It's kind of this tricky thing, because the seventh key is trusting the process, which is sort of connected to surrender and acceptance. And again, it's kind of a dance where you surrender to how you're feeling right now, but you never give up on trying to be better. Surrender and accept that you're in perimenopause or menopause, and you never give up on making your life the best that you can make it be. And when it gets really, really difficult is when you want to ask those questions of yourself, like, okay, what do I really want? Who do I really want to be? How can I make this happen in my life? What does it take for me to get to this place? And then never quit. Miracles are possible.
I love that, and I think that's right. It is that mix of acceptance, but yet still striving to fulfill for a fulfilled life, and looking for that. Keep looking if you feel like there's something you're looking for. Keep looking, and definitely, I loved your approach, and that so many, like I say, lots of tips and guidance, and moments of clarity. When I was listening to how you talk about this interconnectedness of everything, and real simple tactics that we can incorporate into our everyday lives with ease. So thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed talking about your book and getting some insight into why the menopause journey can be such a rocky road. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Shiroko.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.